nice to see. It's nice to see a couple of faces, although that's online. I just will start with some welcoming words. But before I start, I just would like to say to all the people who need a translation, a simultaneous translation in either French or German, please click on the Earth icon in the bar below the screen. And if you have a problem, please write it in the chat. Und vielleicht muss ich das auch noch auf Deutsch und Französisch sagen, also wenn ihr eine Übersetzung benötigt, dann bitte klickt auf das Globus-Symbol unten unter dem Bildschirm und dort könnt ihr die Sprache wählen und wenn ihr irgendein Problem habt, dann könnt ihr in den Chat schreiben, dort erhält ihr Hilfe. Et puis pour les personnes qui aimeraient avoir une traduction en français, je vous prie de juste cliquer sur le petit symbole de la terre en bas de l'écran. Et puis là, vous pouvez choisir la langue. Et puis en cas que vous avez quelques problèmes, vous pouvez juste le mettre dans le chat et quelqu'un va vous aider. Merci beaucoup. So, dear activists, dear members of Amnesty International, and in particular, dear members of Queer Amnesty. Dear people, I hope all over Europe, or at least all over Switzerland, interested in the human rights situation in Poland. My name is Lisa Salsa. I'm a campaigns coordinator for Europe and Central Asia at Amnesty Switzerland. Before I introduce our guests tonight, I would just like to mention that today is a very special day. Today, Amnesty International turns 60 years old, and I feel very honored to host this first Meet the Defenders webinar today. Amnesty International was founded in 1961 on the idea that together, ordinary people can change the world. Today, Amnesty is a worldwide movement for human rights with 10 million supporters and activists, each one committed to fighting for justice, equality, and freedom everywhere. Peter Benenson, the founder of our movement, once said, "Open your newspaper any day of the week, and you will find a report from somewhere in the world of someone being imprisoned, tortured, or executed because his opinions or religion are unacceptable to his government." The newspaper reader feels a sickening sense of impotence. Yet, if these feelings of disgust all over the world could be united into common action, something effective could be done. Of course, change does not happen overnight. It takes persistence and a belief in the power of humanity to make a difference. Two extraordinary women who have shown persistence and a belief in the power of humanity are here with us today. It is a very special pleasure and great honor for me to welcome as our guests two brave women who stand for millions of brave people all over the world, people who take injustice personally, people who risk a lot for trying to make human rights a reality to all, human rights defenders. Elzbieta Podlesna and Joanna Iskandar are outspoken activists and human rights defenders from Poland. They have stood against hate and discrimination for many years and are fighting for a just and equal Poland. They have been targeted by the Polish authorities just because of their peaceful activism, which is sadly an experience many human rights defenders know. Today, we want to hear their story, and we want to know from them how we can best support them in their struggle for justice. But first, I would like to give the floor to Mikołaj Dzierwiński, who is Equal Rights Campaigner at Amnesty Poland. I am very happy to have him here to give us a brief introduction into the human rights context in Poland. Miko, thank you very much for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. As Lisa said, I'll briefly talk about the situation in Poland, where we met with Elzbieta as well, and about this, especially the situation of LGBTI people in Poland. I think it's important to know that the situation started to deteriorate very quickly in 2015 with the changes in law regarding assemblies. And we saw very quickly that assemblies were the first thing to be targeted, and human rights defenders, peaceful protesters, were targeted by the police and by the state. We saw that, for example, in the case of 14 women, where I met Elzbieta in 2000, that happened in 2018. And thankfully, Elzbieta, then the case of Elzbieta and other women that stood up against hate was won in the court, and they were not fined for their peaceful protest. But regardless, they still were facing they still faced a lot of hate and attacks from the right-wing demonstrators, and this was never resolved. They never received justice. And we saw that people attacking peaceful protesters or people that were against human rights were not really facing justice, while human rights defenders, while activists were facing more and more persecutions and harassment. And we saw that in a huge amount in the last half year, when the protests around abortion popped up around Poland in bigger cities and small villages, and all of them were persecuted by the police. People had broken hands, broken legs, people were maced, people were arrested. And now hundreds of people are facing criminal charges or are facing further harassment from the police. Even situations such as young climate strike activists facing arrest for deprivation and using megaphones in public. And this is the everyday situation of human rights activists and protesters on the street in Poland. What is important, though, is that the current government chose LGBTI community as a special target, as an enemy number one of the state. The last that we have is from the 2015-16 that 2/3 of LGBTI people face discrimination in life, and nearly 70% of LGBTI youth have suicidal thoughts. And this causes the situation of LGBTI people to be terrible at this point. And yet in 2019, the whole election year was focused on homophobia and transphobia. And this was really a situation that that really put a strain to LGBTI people, and Ella and Joanna wanted to support them, wanted to show the support, and I'm sure they will talk a bit more about that. I want to say that what happened to Ella and Joanna is an exemplary case of how LGBTI activists are harassed right now. We know of other cases that the government uses the offending religious belief case. We know of activists that peacefully protested in August last year against the arrest of their friend, another activist, and 48 were arrested by the police for the night and were beaten by the police. We even had stories of sexual assault by the police. And in such situation, being a brave activist such as Ella and Joanna is not easy. And plenty of activists face burnout, plenty of activists face chilling effect. And this is the situation in which we have to somehow fight for our rights, and we cannot give up. And what means a lot, and I think Ella and Joanna will agree with us, what means a lot is the solidarity from abroad, is the movement and the strength of the amnesty movement as well, but also other activists around the world putting the spotlight on Poland, saying that it's important to fight for human rights in Poland, and it's important to stand against hate. Because in Poland, we don't have hate crime laws punishing for hate against LGBTI people. We don't have hate speech laws. We don't have any protections outside of labor code. And this is the current situation. Furthermore, if you want to, for example, have your gender recognized in Poland, you have to sue your parents. If you, the so-called therapies that you can, the therapies that are changing the sexual orientation are not banned in Poland. They are actually encouraged by the church and the state. So this situation causes a lot of LGBTI people to be withdrawn, to be scared of their future in the country. And I think such activism as Ela and Joanna showing support in Płock was important and is important every day. And I think I'll give the floor now to them, because I guess they'll talk a bit more about what they were doing.
Thank you very much, Miko. I think this is very important background information. I will now give the word to Stefan Faust, a member of Queer Amnesty, who has very kindly volunteered to facilitate the discussion tonight. Welcome, Stefan, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Also a very warm welcome from my side. I'm Stefan Faust, and it's my pleasure to moderate tonight's session with Ela and Joanna. I work as a co-group lead for Queer Amnesty. Queer Amnesty is a subgroup of Amnesty International Switzerland and is doing advocacy and campaigning for human rights, for sexual orientation and gender identity. And maybe just a brief reminder, Lisa, that people can ask questions in the chat, correct? So in case people have questions, you can write your questions directly in the chat. We will have someone collecting these questions, and then we'll see how many questions come in and maybe choose the most important or relevant ones, and we will answer these questions at the end of the session, just for you to know, so you have the chance to ask questions in case you like to ask questions in the chat. So I'm really excited. So let's get started. It's great to have you here, Ela and Joanna. Ela, you are active for human rights in Poland. What are the specific challenges that you're facing as human rights defender?
Hello and all the best to Amnesty International. And thank you for inviting us and all people interested in situation in Poland coming here. What situation we face now? I would say that one of the burdens is the necessity of acting on very varied fields, and the number of these fields which needs our involvement, our protests, our voice. If our involvement started, me and Joanna, we've met the women's strike, so it means that we try to defend women procreation right, and I would say in the legal point of view we failed. We failed because our abortion law, which used to be one of the most harsh in Europe, became even more harsh and restricted. So we are to invent other ways of acting, which Joanna, for example, is involved. And there are at least 10 or 12 or dozen fields which needs our conscience and our voice, such as rule of law, such as LGBT people. So it means that if you are a human rights activist in Poland, it means that you are to be a sort of multitask person. And it's really tiring. And if you are not engaged in something, you feel guilty. That there are so many things. I sometimes feel guilty that I do not take part in any climate protests because there is just simply no time and no space for that. So this is one thing. The other thing is a sort of legal burden, because as Mika told, there are hundreds of people in Poland who are brought to court because of their activism and because of sometimes very basic things like being on the street during the protests, or executing their right for gathering. And the freedom of speech is also violated. So it goes forward and forward, and there are more and more people involved in legal problems. And it is very difficult for me personally to stay at court and to hear Elżbieta Podleśna accused. Yes. I feel a sort of psychological burden, and I know also that a lot of people suffers from these psychological troubles. That's why we established, and this is the way of functioning, which is the step forward. We established a network for psychological help for activists, and we've got a lot of clients. Because, we must remember that we have been protesting for last 6 years already. It's the 6th year of permanent fight, of permanent being on the front line all the time. So it needs a lot of strength, and engages all your powers, and necessarily it brings burnout. I personally feel already being burned out of all the time being on the front line. It is also facing the lack of privacy, because we are already known, our faces are known, and it is fantastic that people all around Europe know us. But sometimes it's also uncomfortable when you go on the street and you don't know whether you will be attacked. Somebody is approaching to you and you start thinking, oh my God, what are his or her intentions? Yes. So I never had it before these 6 years, that I was thinking that somebody may approach me with bad intentions. So I think that these are the main things which comes to my mind when you ask me about what we face now.
So it happens a lot that you're being recognized on the streets in Poland?
Yes, sometimes. One day I was just walking one of the most the biggest streets in Warsaw, and there was somebody on the how do you call it? A sort of rolls. Yes, you drive on. This is not a bicycle. This is something less complicated. And he started screaming to me something, and I said, "Oh my God, should I escape now?" And now I thought, no, it can't be like this. Somebody supporting Order Iuris or some other right-wing extremists would not use such an equipment. Yes? Because it's a sort of childish one, yes? So it needs a sort of self-distance and sense of humor. And yes, but sometimes I was in dangerous situation as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will maybe talk about that later. Joanna, you're well known because of the court trial launched against you for allegedly hurting Richard's feelings, which is not so well known in Western Europe, certainly. Can you maybe describe the case a bit to us and what exactly happened to you?
Yeah, of course. So at first, thank you very much for inviting us
vous
here.
remercier de nous avoir invités à participer
So our trial
à ce webinaire.
offending religious
Notre
feelings,
procès a trait
which means we were charged under the penal code, threatened with up to 2 years in prison.
Une offense.
I would like to add that when we were there,
Face à des croyances religieuses, nous risquions 2 ans de prison. Nous avons utilisé des images de la Vierge Marie avec un drapeau arc-en-ciel comme auréole. Ces affiches ont été utilisées, alors que nous n'avons pas l'autorisation de l'administrateur de lieu où nous nous trouvions.
Installed in the church in Płock on the occasion of the most important Catholic holidays.
Nous avons mené cette action pendant les vacances de Pâques, qui est la fête religieuse la plus importante.
The response was that being LGBT person is a sin.
La réponse a été que nous avons reçue après cet événement, c'était faire partie de la communauté LGBT est un péché.
Joanna,
just a moment, because we have an issue with the translation. The French translation is running in parallel. So maybe we can just have a brief break of a few seconds to get that.
Okay, great. I didn't know if that was only just me hearing it.
We're also hearing it. Yeah. I thought it could have been sorted.
Il semblerait qu'il y ait un problème avec l'interprétation.
A moment to get
Un instant, s'il vous plaît.
Okay, so just tell me when I can move on with this history.
Lisa, ich glaube, Fabienne kümmert sich das, oder? Vielleicht kann sie uns ein Zeichen geben, wenn sie das Gefühl hat, dass
ja, voll. Ich bin es am Regeln. 2 Sekunden.
No online event without technical problems, I think.
It is happening all the time, so don't worry, that's okay.
It's actually quite complicated to do this simultaneous translation in the background. So
I'm sure it is.
But
yeah, I hope that we will find a solution for that.
Est-ce que le canal français passe toujours sur le canal anglais?
Oui. Attends.
Okay.
Thank you, Stefan. It's a good translation. That's very good to know. Also for the translators, nice to hear.
Barbara, est-ce que tu peux retenter?
Je ne sais pas d'où vient le problème.
It's okay, it's solved.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you just go a bit back. Just in a sorry.
All right.
Hard to understand.
Joanna, peut-être que vous pouvez nous redonner un mot de contexte, revenir un petit peu en arrière, et toutes nos excuses encore pour ce problème technique. Joanna, oui.
To say briefly about our action, what it was about.
Yes.
So our action was a reaction for the homophobic installation installed in one of the churches in Płock from the occasion of the most important Catholic holidays in Poland, I mean Easter holidays. This installation was speaking like that being a LGBT person is a sin, like selfishness, hate, or betrayal. So we found out about it from social media, and we decided to react for this. So we went to Płock, which is about 100 kilometers from Warsaw, where we live, and we hung the stickers and posters with Mary in this rainbow halo around this church where this installation was. And what is most also important, the second part of our action was also putting up posters with a list of the names of bishops, Polish bishops, who were protecting perpetrators of pedophilia crimes within the church. And in this way, we wanted to show the hypocrisy of the church, which creates a fictional, a fake public enemy in the form of LGBTIQ people, and is unable to deal with criminals in its own ranks. However, our accusers are consistently silent about this part of our action. So, as you said, we were accused by the prosecutor's office and the additional prosecutors who were the parish priest who installed this homophobic installation in his church, and an anti-LGBT and anti-abortion Catholic activist, very well known in Poland, Kaja Godek. And the matter became high profile because Kaja Godek was at this time running an election campaign, and she was a candidate to the European Parliament, and she used our action as her political fuel. So it was her who publicized the case on the Twitter. Then the Minister of the Interior from Law and Justice Party, which is ruling party in Poland, got interested in it, which led, among other things, to the detention of Elzbieta, and that she was taken by the police from Warsaw, where she lives, to Płock, where our action took place. And thanks to our great lawyer, Ella was released on the same day. And in turn, me and Anna, so the third from our rainbow trio, we went to the police station on our own. And the court case started almost 2 years later, at the beginning of this year. At the first hearing, we gave our explanations, which was a big challenge for us. It was very stressful. And we knew that this matter is very important for the entire LGBT community in Poland, which gave us a really great support, and we are really very grateful for that. And at the same hearing, the priest and Kaja Godek also gave their testimonies. Then there was one more case, and on the third, the court pronounced a sentence that we are not guilty. And the sentence was very wise, very elaborate, and really touching. The court confirmed that the rainbow does not offend.
Yeah, let me just maybe pick that thing up, Ela. Do you then obviously interpret that the dropping of the charges against you as a good sign of the independence of the judiciary in Poland? Or can you not say that just because of that one, basically, decision? How do you interpret that?
Just before the verdict, we didn't expect anything. Yes, because it was very difficult to imagine what sort of verdict it would be. And we were really stressed waiting for this. And I remember this feeling of deep relief that somebody just came to the sense of our action, and somebody considered not only the paragraphs, but also the meaning of our action and Rainbow Mary, and that somebody was wise enough not to follow the sort of religious, it was not about religion, yes. The judge understood that it was not about the religion and religious feelings, but that was about homophobia. And we understood it like this, that if the verdict would be, you are guilty, this verdict would open more widely, because these doors are open widely, but it would be just like, you know, no borders, no limits for homophobic acts in Poland. So it was important for us personally, but we also had this we were pretty sure that it is much more important for LGBT people in Poland that in this way they are a little bit more protected. And it's not only that the judge protected us, but first of all, somebody stood in the name of LGBTQ people in Poland. And yes, the judge, she said very wisely that something which is precious for people cannot offend other people. That the image, the picture of Black Madonna could be offended only by the use of something which is ugly and disgusting and whatever. And if we find the rainbow, the symbol of the rainbow, something which is meaningful for us, something which is dear for us, for me, it's one of the most beautiful symbols in humanity, because it symbolizes the unity in diversity. And it represents the sort of holiness, and it cannot offend anything or anybody. And for me, dropping this charge was the proof that somebody thinks logically, somebody can stand for other people, and somebody is not only wise enough, but also courageous. Because almost immediately, the right-wing media and government media started digging in the past of the judge, trying to find something ugly and trying to humiliate her. So she was the next object of smear campaign. So it's really not easy to be a good judge in Poland nowadays, because it means that you are the object of attacks, not only the activists, but also the judge who would give the proper verdict. And now, just a day before our meeting, we received the appeal because both the prosecutor and the people who felt offended, who were a sort of civil public prosecutors in this case, they lodged the appeal to the higher court. And I tried to read one of them, which is official one, which is not the private one, which comes from the Polish prosecutor, and it's really scary because it is completely a sort of mixing up religion with law and beliefs with beliefs of anybody with secular regulations of the country.
Yeah, it's awful to hear that people who are engaging for activists themselves get targets for smear campaigns. That's awful, because it certainly puts more pressure on everyone else who wants to support you. That's a terrible development. So Joanna, why is that? Where does that hate against LGBTIQ people in Poland come from, and who nourishes it? We have heard that certainly there's some right-wing parties and a bit of the church. Can you maybe tell us a bit more on where that hate comes from?
Yeah. So maybe I will start in this point that Polish society is still very conservative, and the Catholic Church enjoys declining but still great authority in Poland. And I'm saying this because the church is one of the main attackers against LGBTQ people in Poland. What we heard during our hearing from the priest on LGBTQ people was simply fascist rhetoric, and I can't describe it in any other way. Hate speech against LGBT people is used not only by the priests, but also by the highest hierarchs of the Polish Catholic Church and in official church documents. In relation to LGBTQ people, a perfect alliance between the throne and the church we can see. The politicians of the currently ruling party during the election campaigns competed in hateful comments depriving LGBTQ people in their dignity and humanity. President Duda postulated, for example, the ban on adoption by the same-sex couples should be included in the constitution. This is what he said last year. And in Poland, nationalists and openly fascist movements, as well as fundamentalist ones, are operating with the quiet or sometimes with open support of the ruling party, and they are growing in strength. So if we add it up, we get a picture of really broad alliance responsible for hate speech and the many harms, these physical harms that are happening to LGBTQ people in Poland. And it is worth adding that this is what Miko said at the beginning of our meeting, that crimes motivated by hate based on sexual orientation are not punished in Poland. We don't have such law. It means that the use of hate speech against LGBTQ people is unpunished.
Yeah, and Ela, if we go even a bit deeper and look at the structure of the Polish societies, I'm sure there is also differences between the cities and the countryside, and you may even talk a bit about these so-called LGBTI-free zones. And what I would be interested, is there even support? You feel the support from the Polish people? We're talking mostly about institutions now, about politicians. Do you also feel that negative hatred from private people, basically?
As far as for LGBT-free zones, you should compare it with the results of the election. So this map would be a sort of reflection of law and justice, or the confederation, which means the right wing, and the fascist parties would win. Why is it like this? If you take into the consideration that a lot of Polish people on the south or eastern border, they do not have any other media than the public one, which is directed just directly by the government. So on the one hand, you've got the immense propaganda anti-LGBT. I was one of the victims of that, because the Polish public media produced a sort of nightmare about LGBT so-called ideology, which means just exactly about Polish LGBT people. And the title is meaningful because the title is Invasion. And I was one of the figures which was described in this film. Although I am not an LGBT person, I'm just an ally. Yes, but you know. So we appeal to the court, and we'll try to have the court case with TV, this public TV. But coming to these LGBT-free zones, if you've got this sort of massive smear campaign, this hatred, this manipulation with facts and lies on the one hand, and on the other hand, a very big influence of Catholic Church, which is another media, you will have this picture sort of completed. So I wouldn't say that there is a division between big cities and, for example, villages, but rather between main channel viewers and listeners to the main channel radio, and a lot of, for example, older people are just got used to that. You know, that they do not listen to any other things, and they just and they are influenced by an absolutely nightmare propaganda, but on the other hand, we shouldn't forget that there are a lot of wise and reasonable people who give us a lot of support, because even during this campaign, we were shown at the end of this by the judge a lot of files. Really, there were dozens of files of our case. And the judge told at one moment that most of these files were filled with the letters from people who declared themselves as Catholics and who wanted to say that they do not feel offended by the rainbow. And that they support us, and they are against treating LGBT people like they are treated in Poland. And it was something I started crying when I saw that, because I thought that these files belonged to all, I don't know, all the cases of the current day, and they were just connected only with our case. And there were so many layers of support, and so it is not only night, there is also brightness in this.
Wonderful, yeah, that's great news. And certainly this repression is not just an issue for LGBTI, but it's also a sign for and let's now transition more into the topic of freedom of expression is one element of many that you've also mentioned in your introduction, that freedom of expression and assembly in Poland is at risk in general. So maybe, Joanna, you can talk a bit about that and widening the view a bit away from just the LGBTI community towards that broader topic, which is, yeah, an issue for many other people and groups.
Yeah, so I think I will start with saying that Poland is now on the way to authoritarianism, which is ruling by restricting civil rights such as mentioned freedom of demonstrations, freedom of assemblies, freedom of expression. And this is happening at various levels, from cutting subsidies to politically inconvenient magazines to attempts to create a chilling effect on activists and journalists who are sued just for anything. And one of the leading Polish writers was sued by the president for calling him a moron. So nearly every criticism made publicly against the authority or the Catholic Church is a risk of trial. And for historical and political reasons, the Catholic Church has a special position in Poland. It is an important political player and has the support of the state and the party. This can be seen in the growing number of cases of offending religious feelings in recent years. Fundamentalist movements who are promoting the concept of Christianophobia, which means hating Christians for their faith, and they are promoting their reports, etc., about the increasing number of the scale of crimes motivated by Christianophobia. And we are talking about the country where we have 90% of Catholics, and the church, which is largely financed by the state. So if you ask in what context our case took place, we felt like we were at the witch trial, and we are the witches, and we are and overshadowed by the growing authoritarianism and religious state.
So you mentioned the power of the state, and I'm just peeking a bit onto the questions in the chat. And there was a reaction of the European Union also towards these LGBTI-free zones. and also to in general, the legislation and their worry about the independence of judiciary. Do you think there is enough international, I mean, not from activists like us, political pressure? And how do you see, is that helpful for our case, or is it rather, because for some countries like in Belarus, it doesn't seem to change the view of the government, it rather even strengthens their view to put more pressure on the people. So do you think that, first of all, is the European action appropriate, or you would expect more from the European Union especially? And do you think that's helping your case, or rather making it even worse?
Mm-hmm. This is the question to me.
Yeah, or,
right now? Yeah?
sorry,
okay.
Yeah, or Ella also.
Okay. So maybe I will start with saying that that the ruling party is not how to say it. European Union is not the authority for them. So what can influence their actions is just taking away the money. This is the last thing that can influence their activity, and this is very sad. But sometimes I feel that that European Union maybe can do something more for these cases, and especially when we are thinking about this LGBTQ free zones. But if you're asking me about some particular actions that can be taken, it's maybe difficult for me to say right now what exactly it could be done. But maybe Ella, you have some idea.
Yeah. Go ahead. Thanks,
Joanna. I would say that the sort of stubborn and quick actions are needed, and even if European Union is not the authority for the government, because the government is very inside oriented, yes, so they mainly care about their voters, yes, but there is also an importance of international opinion, which would influence, for example, our media. I have such an experience that if European paper writes about something, and there are 5 titles writing about something and people are talking about something, then Polish media, a part of course, the government one, but so-called free media, which are quite a sort of private ones, and they are not so much free because they are afraid of losing funds as well, and they suffer a lot from economical pressure. But if they are pressed from the European journalists, they would write about this. So it means that there is a bigger chance that more Polish people would be informed about what is going on, and more Polish people would, for example, vote against it. Because what we need is the information. And also from my personal point of view, it is very important to know that some MP, European MP, takes care about what is going on with me, whether I would go to jail or not. So I would like them to act, and I really would like them to act, to do something more than they do right now. And there is also one thing which our government is very cute about. It is a sort of losing the sense of novelty. You know, that people would just get used to that. Oh, Poland, they troublemakers, yes. Oh, how long we can talk about the end of democracy in Poland? How long we can talk about the human rights in Poland? Oh no, let's go somewhere else. You know, this case is lost. And they play with that. We have this not proverb, but you know, this anecdote of cooking the frog. Yes, so when you cook it quickly, it will jump out. If you do it in a proper slow way, it will not try to liberate themselves. So, and the same is going on with Polish society. So if they are flooded by thousands of things people should react, they would just say, oh, okay, they broke another rule. Oh, okay, yes. And if European audience would do the same, I'd just say, oh, well, Polish government just broke another law, yeah? We would just go to jail, you know. And I'm quite a nice person. Joanna is the nicest person I know. Anna, I can swear, is also a very cute one and very nice. And it wouldn't be good if we go to jail, you know. We are just too nice for going there and to be persecuted anyhow. So please do that. Yes. Make this effort, and yes. And
yeah, you're saying something very true. It's basically that human race is very easily getting used to new things, and also not only to positive ones, but to negative ones, especially if these baby steps were almost under the radar. Yeah. And yeah, that's the frog is a great metaphor. Unfortunately, not such a nice one. Yeah. So we've talked about your issues, which was great to understand. But now I think for our listeners especially, it's absolutely crucial to see, you know, we sometimes would wish to contribute, and we feel a bit helpless, not just as an organization, but also maybe me as for example, as a private person. What you said, showing solidarity is great, and we're trying to do that. Is there anything else that we from abroad, be it as an organization like Amnesty or also as private persons, could do, Joanna and Ela? I think it would be great if both of you would answer that crucial question. I think especially for our listeners, that's an important one.
Okay, so well, Amnesty and your supporting community made a lot for us, and thousands of signatures under the petition about our case. That was really huge success. But however, our case is not over yet, as you know. Because an appeal was received by the court. And we encourage you to publicize this matter using the methods available to you, your media, your social media. You can try to influence your national or European politicians to speak about this matter. Importantly, this case is not, as we said, but I want to accent this. This is not the case only about us. It is about whole LGBT community in Poland, and this is something that we want to world to know. As for the activities undertaken, I will give such examples. During our trial, many people wrote letters to the court in which they argued to the court that the rainbow was not offensive for their faith and they are Catholics. This is what Ella said a few minutes ago. When the case in the second instance begins, it will also be possible. So if you want, feel free to write to the court. We also know that Western partner cities terminate partnerships with cities in Poland if anti-LGBT resolutions are adopted here. Of course, you can also support Polish organizations fighting for the rights of LGBTQ people. So these are my ideas, and maybe Ella, maybe you can add something more. Maybe you have any idea.
Yes, there are thousands of ways. I remember from our previous action, Miko coming to the court with letters from all over the world. And if you have such a letter with you, that somebody wrote some words, it's really, it gives you a sort of wings, yeah. And I remember one action, I think from the Netherlands, when one of the artists invented such like this, that he was standing with the Rainbow Mary with the on the beach, and asking people whether they like it or not. And of course, everybody said, yes, it's very nice. And you know, Polish activists are to go to prison for that. Oh, come on. Yeah? And it was really beautiful. This movie, this film was really touching. So you can invent a lot of things, but on the bigger scale, I think that there is something which is very sad and very simple, and I would say it is money. That almost all human rights organizations and NGOs were just cut from money. And it is very easy to kill the best initiative if you don't have money. Also, it's very simple, you know. You can support, for example, some institutions, some NGOs which are for tired activists. They run a sort of support protecting them from burnouts. There are funds for the lawyers. We've got beautiful, magnificent lawyers which serve us pro bono. But for example, when I want to sue the public TV, that's a different things, and I would like, and of course, and it is, for example, now served pro bono by the beautiful lawyers, but we do very few things like that. We do not sue our attackers, because it's very difficult to find a lawyer who would do that. So there are legal funds for LGBT people. For this, it's just to look at this and to think that it is our common thing. Yes, it's our common matter. Because if the fascism and nationalism and totalitarian system would be successfully installed in Poland, and I think it almost is done, it will influence on the other part of Europe. Just today, there was the opening of the new university in Poland, which is established by the terrible Catholic right extreme. And all the money would flow from the independent universities to this one. And on this university, people would be taught that LGBT is a sin and it is a deviation. Yes, and it will be supported by the government, by the public money, from from my taxes as well. And perhaps it will be supported by the European money, because why not? So you must be very careful, and also insisting on the European MPs to check how the European funds are spent in Poland. Because it is not possible to cut Poland from fundings, not in the terms of COVID, not when the whole society gets weaker and weaker. It wouldn't be, in my opinion, in my private opinion, it wouldn't be a good idea. But it needs a sort of, how to say, checkout, yes? So you've got to be a sort of watchdogs at the same time, whether your money, your European money, is spent on the right-wing extremists, yes, or is, for example, devoted to the progress of science, yes, because it would be the most ridiculous if European money would be used by anti-Europeans extremists. So checking and supporting activism, which is the only hope, I would say.
So we, as activists and supporters, can have a little contribution by donating to you, to Poland, but certainly also to Amnesty in Poland, or to Amnesty here in Switzerland. Or in Queer Amnesty in Switzerland, we are having one of our focus campaigns last year and this year was Poland. And the Pride in Zurich, for example, will have two topics. One is the marriage in Switzerland, marriage for everyone. And the second topic is also Poland. So we will also use the gay pride in LGBTIQ pride, in Zurich with our little campaign that we have for Poland. So we're trying to certainly support it as good as we can. It would be great if as many of these listeners today would also try to, if they wish to support that campaign, either in Poland or also here in Switzerland. So we've talked about many difficult things, and so maybe a last question, or maybe you may not explore it because we're almost a bit over time, but to close with something positive. You mentioned some of the letters you received. Is there anything positive, maybe from institutions, be it from politicians or from civil society groups, or that you would say, wow, there's also hope. There is also hope. So we're not just painting that very dark picture, which is probably true, but it would be nice to have maybe a slightly positive outlook also. Maybe just one or two anecdotes that you could share, so we then move over to the questions afterwards. Ayla and Joanna, whomever wishes to.
Okay, so when I think about this case, the warmest memory is about the people who were with us. We were in the court, and they were outside with the demonstration in the snowy January, freezing with this snow, massacre. And they were there during 8 hours. Our first trial was like 8 hours long, and they were there, standing for us with rainbow flags, dancing, singing, shouting. They are supporting us, and we are there, sitting there inside, and we are hearing them. And this is the anecdote that you see my reaction. I'm smiling, I'm laughing. These people gave us so much energy, so much support, so much solidarity. When that was my feeling, that after this first trial, when I went out and I saw this rainbow crowd, I felt like we already won this case. It didn't matter what was the verdict of the court. Yeah, I felt like this solidarity is our victory.
Great, thanks. Ayla, anything to add?
Yes, I would like to add two things. One of them also happened during our case. There are people demonstrating and showing their solidarity. And there is a small group of activists which is called protest tea, and they come with warm tea, so just with such simple human gestures, like bringing you food and bringing you something hot to drink when it is January. And since LGBT protests, which took part in August last year, it became a sort of tradition, which is expressed under the title "You'll Never Walk Alone." That people go to the police stations when activists are detained, and they shout and they scream and they sing, and they've got verbals and drums, and when you are inside, you hear that you really do not walk alone. And this is something which is really beautiful, and this is how activism in Poland transformed from the huge marches, which gave nothing, to a sort of perhaps smaller actions, but with the will of support each other, of taking care of each other, because we are on war, and we need care, and we need warmth after the battle.
That's a wonderful closing word of the discussion. And these human gestures, that sometimes it doesn't need to be a huge amount of money, just that humanity. And that's a wonderful closing. Thank you very much for that, Ayla. So let's move over to the questions. We have received quite a bit of questions, see how far we get. There was already some questions which were handed in before the webinar, just during the last days, and I will start with one question that we received. What does the everyday look like for LGBT people in Poland, not necessarily activists? Do they actually feel some of those difficulties in their daily lives, and how would you describe that? Because because we're mostly talking about the activists now, but many of our listeners may be just non-activists that wish to live a decent life, and that would be interesting to hear. You know, how would you describe that ordinary LGBTI life in Poland? How is that affected by what you've talked about?
My patients, I'm a psychologist and psychotherapist. They are threatened. They are afraid of going out with their partners. They will never go hand in hand. They will never kiss each other on the streets. And people are attacked because of wearing something which is rainbow, which contains rainbow. And there are really something which is, you can't imagine. There was a kindergarten which had a rainbow, and they were pressed to repaint it. Yeah. So if it comes to such things, you can understand how difficult it is to live, to survive. What comes to my mind that there was we had several suicides of LGBT people in Poland, and we try to celebrate anniversary of one of these suicides, and it's really difficult even to speak about it. But these people who come to one of the biggest bridges in Warsaw with rainbow flags, they are attacked every year. So it's we say with Joanna and Anna that we were attacked once because we did something, yes, and they are attacked regularly because of whom they are. And this is this difference, because we could withdraw, and they can't withdraw from whom they are. And this is a difference that we made it by choice. Yeah. And, I'm scared about my patients, really, and because they regularly feel not being accepted, not being loved. We had results of some researches which shows that very few Polish parents accept their kids if they are not heterosexual. Yeah, and
so maybe I will just add, Ella, if I can do it right now. Research of campaign against homophobia shows that about 75% of LGBTQ teenagers have suicidal thoughts. So you know, this is social problem, systematical problem, and the state is blind for that on purpose. But maybe to say something optimistic, what I am observing is that, and this is really beautiful, this young LGBTQ people are building their own supporting network, supporting groups, supporting communities. And this is really beautiful. And, you know, they are right now under this huge attack because they have this inner courage to speak about themselves, that they are not heterosexual, that they are transgender, that they are queer, that they are non-binary, and they are educating people. They are so brave that they are organizing themselves to go and to organize an event in some anti-LGBTQ zone, to educate people and to, just to be there and to show themselves, hello, I am lesbian. Here we have a ulotka. Flyer. So and just read it, educate yourself, know something more, and this is so beautiful that they have in this dramatic situation they still have courage and this inner power to fight for themselves, and this is really beautiful, and for me it gives me hope, real hope.
Yeah, that's very brave. I've seen a documentary on Arte on some ladies in the countryside somewhere, and I was shocked to see that they had to be protected by the police in some areas to just avoid that, in worst case, they're being attacked. And that was not just only that they're doing their work, that was for me brave enough, but then to see that obviously it's so risky to do that they need protection from the police, which is maybe known that they are not so supportive in general of LGBTI questions. So yeah, that was impressive in a negative sense, unfortunately. I've also seen that. That's great. So let's close with one question, which is probably also helping our activists here in Switzerland. It's a bit a general question, because Elzbieta said it needs a lot of power and energy to always be in the front line, and yeah, it's exhausting in a way. And so we were just wondering, how do you still then keep up your motivation, and maybe also as a motivation for us here in Switzerland to be continuing and putting in energy, not just in the Poland case, but in many of these cases in Switzerland, but also abroad. What would you recommend us? How can you keep up motivation and keep motivating yourself?
I can say that the best thing that happened to me during those years on the streets, on the demonstrations, on the protests, or some direct actions was meeting unbelievable friends and unbelievable people. And these are, these relations which we built between ourselves are, I think, the strongest in my life. And this is something that, when you are in such situations with some people, you just have to trust themselves. And you don't have other way. But if you do it, and you will do it something together, this is it is really Ella, you know what I'm talking about, yeah? It is hard to say about this feeling.
Yes. It's something really essential, which really gives you a sort of feeling that perhaps thousands would hate you, yes, but there is a group of friends who will always understand what you mean and will support you. Not only group of friends, I was very much moved that the Danish people started. They decided to do something more about LGBT things in Poland, and Danish embassy coordinated hanging rainbow flags on embassies in Warsaw. It was so beautiful to go out and to see all these rainbow flags in different parts of Poland in Warsaw. We tried to persuade the president of Warsaw, who is liberal one, to hang the rainbow flags, and he was so much afraid of that. And so your ambassadors did it on their embassies. And the Danish one was the coordinator, and there was a big program in public Danish TV. And then I opened my messenger, and sometimes I go to this, other spam, yes, and I don't like it because there are some ugly messages. And this day it was filled with the messages from just ordinary Danish people who watched this, and they decided to devote some time to find me on Facebook and to write a few sentences. You know, when you are so much exhausted, when you go to your mailbox and you take another envelope from the court and so, or from the police, and you say, what now? Why don't they leave me alone? I don't do any new action now because, I'm tired enough. And when you open your messenger and you see that a lady from Denmark decided to write something to you, just very few words, it really gives you motivation that you can't fail. You can't just say that, oh no. And another thing, don't pretend to be hero. Scream if you are in pain. Talk about it. Don't pretend that everything is okay. Then nobody would notice if you fail. Yeah. And I said to myself that the world will know if I fail, and if I can't anymore, if they break me, it will not go in silence, because violence always goes in silence. And yeah, if we fail, it will be a huge boom, from everywhere. And I'm pretty sure about that. And it gives me, yes, it gives me strength.
Yeah, and that's also great for us as just ordinary people, that an email from us can support you in your motivation. That's great news, even if it comes from abroad, and we may not even understand all the details of the issues in your country. That's wonderful news. So, and that's something every one of us can do, and that's great news.
Yes, and please tell your ambassador in Poland that it was great.
Yeah, we're in talks with the ambassador, so we're trying to continue that dialogue. Yes.
Yeah, that's just go on. Yeah.
So
I think that even, excuse me, I think that even the first secretary of the embassy is here with us. I also welcome him, and I think it must be great for him also to hear that, and I'm sure he will transfer this also to the ambassador.
I will. Hello, this is Matthias here. Yes, exactly. I will certainly do so, and I very much admire the courage of Elzbieta and Joanna. So good on you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, that's a great surprise. I wasn't even aware. So thank you very much, Ayla and Joanna. That was a great almost 60 minutes. Thank you very much for your time, for engagement, and also for your persistence for human rights and LGBTI rights. You're not just fighting for Poland, you're fighting for basically for everyone on this world. So that's irreplaceable work, and it's motivation for us, and it's also at the core of what we do here in Switzerland and Amnesty worldwide. So thank you very, very much. That was very insightful, and I hope also for our listeners it was a great time. We're not finished now. I wish to close the loop towards what we're doing here in Switzerland and highlight also the work that the human rights work here in Switzerland, because not just for people abroad, but also in Switzerland, there is some need. And I have been allowed to pitch 20 minutes for Queer Amnesty before I hand back to Lisa. Queer Amnesty, in case you have not heard of it, is, as I said, the biggest subgroup of Amnesty here in Switzerland. And we're always looking for volunteers who work for us on one of our subgroups. We have 3 subgroups. One is Focus Refugees. We are supporting LGBTI refugees here in Switzerland who are coming to Switzerland for asylum and are having a hard time because it's just, even more, it's difficult as an asylum seeker, and it's even more difficult as a LGBTI asylum seeker. So we have mentors who support them. So that's our first group. Then we do campaigning. We have set the Pride, for example, and we do the Poland campaigning, as we have heard, which is great work. And then thirdly, we have editorial and social media work. So we're always looking also for people with some experience or even no experience. That's great. And would certainly be looking forward for a lot of new applications of volunteers, in case you hear that. And maybe Corona has left you with some involuntary space and time that you may wish to use for an organization like Queer Amnesty or also certainly Amnesty International. So Lisa will now wrap up this webinar with some final remarks, and I thank everyone very much for having had the chance to moderate, and I say goodbye and hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Stefan. You were a wonderful host, as you were able to dive into the really sad and shocking details of Ella's and Joanna's stories, and at the time to bring out also glimmers of hope and motivate us all to continue or even start engaging for human rights. And of course, I also join in thanking Ella and Joanna as well as Miko to share their experiences and you're so inspiring and very brave activism with us. I don't know how others think, but your strength has motivated me a lot in continuing engaging for human rights, and you gave us a lot of precious ideas also, like really easy ideas of how to support you. And personally, I will remember to write you a letter before your next hearing. And also I want to say that be sure that we have much faith that Poland is not lost, as you said, Ella, and we will do our best to support you and show you all of our solidarity. I would also like to express my gratitude to 5 women who acted in the background, but were absolutely vital for making this event happen. If you want to, please switch quickly your camera on so the audience can see you. Please join me in thanking our translators, Adelheid, Diana, Barbara, and Livia. Thank you very, very much. You made it possible that even more people were able to participate here and to join us. And a very special thank you goes to Fabienne, who organized the webinar and made sure everything went smooth. Thank you very much, Fabienne. Without you, this event would not have been possible. Just before closing, I want to wrap up or come to the beginning of this event when I highlighted that today we celebrate Amnesty's birthday. And although you may say that there is not so much to celebrate with so much despair and dire human rights situation all over the world, I can say that over the years, our movement has been able to write a lot of success stories. And Amnesty has contributed to the release of tens of thousands of people imprisoned for their beliefs, and also to end the death penalty in dozens of countries, just to mention a few. But much has yet to be done, as the story of Ella and Joanna and Anna illustrates. But we would like to invite you to be part of our birthday campaign called Spreading Hope. You will find the link to the campaign website in the chat. And let me please also highlight that in the framework of this campaign, we will host further Meet the Defenders webinars, just like this one. The next one taking place on 17th of June with Aziz Muhammad, another brave activist, a former refugee from Sudan who has been detained on Manus Island for years after managing to apply for asylum in Switzerland, where he now lives and studies to become a human rights lawyer. Another event to mark in your agendas is the 4th of September, the day of our anniversary conference, which will be held in Bern, hopefully physically. A nice opportunity also to meet again in person and to also meet other human rights activists and defenders from India, for example, and Amnesty team members from other sections such as Hungary. You can find the information of all these events on our web page, amnesty.ch in German and French. And now, before closing, I would invite you to please sign our call for stopping the harassment of LGBTI defenders, Elzbieta, Anna, and Joanna, and to stop the harassment of activism at all in Poland. You can also, I already put the link to the petition in the chat, so please participate. And yes, I hope very much to meet you soon, either in person or at any of our next virtual events. And thank you for participating in this one of the first nice evenings in Switzerland. So it means a lot to us that you were here in this space. And have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
These are just a brief practical question. There is a recording of tonight, isn't it?
Yes.
You will share it, I guess, on social media and on the website, or maybe send it as a link out to the participants, or?
Yes, to be honest, we